Hello everyone. Welcome to Hope and Wellness channel. I'm Omid, your host, and today we're going to talk about carbohydrates. As you have seen in the previous videos, carbohydrates are one of the main macronutrients that are in the food that our body can use for producing energy and live. But they have impacts and effects in the body, and they are being digested and ingested differently in the body. We're going to see different types of the carbohydrates and how they're going to affect our body today, and then how to choose the best from them. Let's get to it. Okay, so carbohydrates are categorized to different classes based on their chemical structure. So if they're created only using one molecule, one type of molecule, they're called monosaccharides. And a good example of that is glucose. Glucose is the type of molecule that is in the bloodstream. So it's the blood sugar. You can see the form of the molecule on the screen. And it's a six carbon molecule, and it's in the ring form that you can see on this screen. Another example is fructose. Fructose is the molecule that you can, the sugar that you can get from the fruits. And as you can see, the chemical structure, it's quite similar to the glucose with a small difference. So it actually has six carbons like glucose, but when it's in a soluble form, when it's in a solution, it just forms a five carbon ring. Okay, so very similar, just a small difference. But that small difference is going to make a big difference in the way that the body digests that and absorbs that and reacts to it. Okay, we're going to see that. And then another form of monosaccharides, simple sugars, are galactose, the type of sugar, the type of molecule that you get in the dairy, in the milk, cheese, and those kind of things. So these are monosaccharides. And then we have disaccharides. Disaccharides are molecules that are created using two different monosaccharides. So if, for example, we combine uh, glucose and fructose together, 50% of each, we have table sugar. The white powder that you put in your drinks and food, it is actually 50% glucose and 50% fructose. Okay? And for example, lactose is combination of glucose and galactose, those two that you just saw. Okay, so monosaccharides and disaccharides. Okay, the next category is polysaccharide. And polysaccharide is simply a lot of monosaccharides chained together. So for example, starch that you have in potatoes, in bread, pasta, and things like that, it's a chain, a long chain of thousands of monosaccharides, thousands of glucose. Okay, so if you attach thousands of glucose together, it forms a polysaccharide called starch. Then, for example, let's talk about the digestion of starch. So, as I said, glucose is the molecule, the sugar molecule in the bloodstream. So when you eat something like starch, your body needs to do something about it to make that glucose, to make it available to your body. And it does that using an enzyme called amylase. Okay, so you have this enzyme, this chemical in the body, and when you consume some starch, your body produces that, excretes that, and it just hits the food and it starts breaking down those chains that you see on the screen. Okay, so it just breaks it down to its basic molecules, to glucose. Okay. How long does it take? It's just seconds. Okay. So as soon as you have that enzyme available to the food, just hitting the food, it's breaking down. And the interesting fact is you have the same enzyme in your mouth. So in your salivary glands in your mouth, you're excreting salivary amylase, same enzyme that you have in your digestive tract, okay, from your pancreas. So when you're chewing down um, and having a piece of bread or starchy food like potato, the enzyme in your mouth starts to breaking down that chain, and you're just having, so it's with a few seconds of difference, you're having glucose. So that's the same thing as having glucose. Why this is important? Because they're saying that the starches are better than uh, monosaccharides, glucose, fructose, or things like that, because they are starch, because they are complex. They take too much time. Just have that in mind, and we're going to see them in the next slides as well. Okay, and the next two types of polysaccharides examples are fiber and glycogen. So I'm going through them very quickly. Fiber is a type of polysaccharides that we can't absorb. So it is not available to our body. We don't have the enzyme to break it down. Okay. So it's a form of carbohydrate that is not available to the body cells, but it is available to the microbes in your body, in our body. So our microbiome can use fiber. So fiber does two things. It feeds the microbes in our body, which is supposed to be a good thing because it's actually feeding the microbes and they can live on that. And then they produce some chemicals that we can use those chemicals that is called postbiotic. And then the other thing is they're saying that that fiber is slowing down the absorption of the rest of the carbohydrates of the food. So two benefits. And then we have glycogen. Glycogen is a type of carbohydrate. It's a complex carbohydrate. It's polysaccharide. And it's the form of carbohydrate that our body produces itself to store sugar. So when you have some sugar and you want to store it for later use, you have the option, our body has the option to store it as glycogen. So it can form glycogen. So what is the basic material to create glycogen? How your body can create that? From everything, from sugar, from fat, and from protein. So whatever that you give, whatever macronutrient that you give your body can just break it down and then assemble again glycogen and store it. So that's your sugar storage in your body. And it is stored in the muscle and in the liver. Okay. So why is it stored like that? Because later on, when you want some sugar and you haven't eaten anything, your body just breaks that down and creates some glucose for you, some blood sugar, and send it to your body. And the rest of the organs of the body and cells in the body can use it. Okay. So if we want to simplify this categorization, we can say that carbs are categorized to two different categories: simple, like table sugar, and complex, like starch, fiber, and things like that. Okay. So before going further, just remember this, that table sugar is 50% fructose, 50% glucose. And a starch is a long chain of glucose. So they're basically very similar and easily get converted to each other with that enzyme that you have in your digestive tract and in your mouth as well. And then fiber that you get from vegetables, fruits, and stuff like that. And then let's get to blood sugar. So, what's the difference of blood sugar and the sugar that you eat? First of all, the type is different. So, the sugar, the white powder that you put in your food, as I mentioned, is 50% glucose, 50% fructose, but your blood sugar is 100% glucose. So you can't use anything else other than glucose in your body. You don't need anything else. Everything else that your body requires can be made in the body. Even fructose, it can be made in the body. Okay? So you don't need that. You don't need to eat fruit to have fructose. If your body requires that, it can. Actually, if you eat too much starch, too much potatoes, bread, and pasta, things like that, your body starts converting that to fructose. That's a signal to the body. We'll talk about that in future videos. That's a signal. That's a very powerful signal to the body to do something else because there are abundance of incoming glucose, okay, incoming starch, which is basically glucose, long chain of glucose. Okay, so the type is different. Why is that important? 2 points. First is the food that you eat is not 100% the same thing that is in your body. Okay? So the type of sugar is different. And the second point is when you're measuring your blood sugar, you're measuring blood glucose. You're not measuring blood fructose. So if you have some sugar, for example, 100 gram of sugar, you see that your blood sugar goes higher to some level because you're not measuring half of the things that you have eaten. Okay? So half of the food that you're eating is not converted directly to blood sugar, the fructose. Okay? That's why they're saying that fruits are better than like pasta, bread, or simple sugars like table sugar, stuff like that. One reason that they're saying fruits are better is they're not impacting your blood sugar as fast as table sugar, which is which is not a good reason. It's not raising your blood sugar in terms of you can't see that number in your blood test. In the result that you get and your doctor sees it, the number is not changing. But it doesn't mean that there is no sugar in your bloodstream. The sugar is there, but in form of fructose that you're not measuring. So the dangers are there. What are the dangers? We are going to have another video on that, and I'm going to the details of the dangers of sugar, all types of sugar in the body. But very simply, like very quickly, glycation. So the sugar starts rotting down proteins in your body. Every cell in the body has protein in it, and it's made of protein. And the sugar just attaches to it and just starts rotting it down. Same thing happens with fructose. They call it fructation, like glycation. So you have fructose and glucose in your bloodstream, and it's impacting your body. It's doing its own bad thing, but you're measuring just one type of it, and they're saying that that's a good thing. This exact type of reasoning was the basis for putting a lot of, for example, high fructose corn syrup, the syrup that they put in the food, in the highly processed food, to make it very sweet, to make it very palatable to you. So you just crave it. It's very sweet, it's palatable, but it doesn't raise your blood sugar because you're not measuring that blood sugar, that type of sugar. Okay. So that's one point. The type is different. The amount is different as well. This is the second point. At every moment in your body, you have 4 to 5 grams of sugar in the whole bloodstream which is circulating in your body, between 4 and 5, something like that. But in one uh, sugary soda, one drink, you can have up to 50, 60, 70 grams of sugar. Okay, so that's a lot more than your body requires. Okay, so the amount is very, very different. You don't need to have that much of sugar in your meals and drinks in order to provide your body with the sugar that it requires. But the next point is the source of the sugar. Your body can create the sugar that it requires. I mentioned this a few minutes ago that your body can create glycogen, which is the storage form of the sugar in the body, from protein, fat, and carbohydrates that you eat. So, whatever that you give your body, whatever healthy macronutrient, whatever food, and food has its own definition. Just go to previous videos and go for the food. Whatever food that you give your body, it can create some form of sugar and store it in the body. And later on, when it wants to use it, it just breaks down that glycogen. Okay? So when you're working out and you want some sugar in your muscle, it is available there. Okay? So the source is different. Your body doesn't require incoming food, incoming carbohydrates in order to produce sugar for the bloodstream. Okay, and these are just known facts in the medical community, in the literature. It's not something that you need to dig into to find out. These are obvious. So I'm giving you like obvious points so you can decide next time that you're eating something, you know that your body doesn't require that. It's not a necessity for your body. Why it's not a necessity? How else we know that? Because there is no essential component to carbohydrates. In the previous video, I told you that we have essential amino acids, we have essential fatty acids, so proteins and fats are essential, but we don't have essential carbohydrates. There is no essential component in carbohydrates, so it's not required in our meals. Okay? And then there is another point. So, in order to manage the blood level, the blood sugar level, our body does many things. One of them is putting some insulin in the bloodstream to tell the rest of the body to consume the sugar and to just pull out the sugar from the bloodstream because it's so dangerous for the body. So if you have more than that 5 gram of sugar in your bloodstream, you don't die right away, but you're hurting your body cells. Okay. And a lot of bad things is happening. We're going to talk about that later on. So one of the mechanisms to lower the blood sugar is using insulin. Insulin does many things. One of them is just telling the body to use more sugar. Okay. But it has a lot of other bad effects in the body as well. This too much insulin for too much time. Okay. So we need to make sure that our blood sugar doesn't go as high. And the best thing is just to avoid very uh, the very source of it, which is carbohydrates. Okay, but let's go through some foods and let's compare them with this fact of the difference of complex carbs and simple sugars. So they're saying that complex carbs are better because they are slower in digestion and absorption in the body. Okay, so when you have a piece of bread or starchy food like potato, it is much better than table sugar because it is slower in digestion and your body has some time to deal with the sugary load that you have just had in your food. And that can be correct. It sort of makes sense, but it's one of those common senses that I told you in the very first video of the channel. This is a common mistake. We think that they are slower because they are more complex, but we sort of forgot the fact that the difference between a simple sugar digestion and a starch is just few seconds. From the point that you put that starchy food in your mouth, your mouth starts excreting the enzyme that it requires to break down the starch into pieces. Those pieces are glucose, or the main sugar that raises your blood sugar. And you can see it in your blood test. Okay, so they're not that better. With knowing that fact, let's go through the list of foods that we have here. So at the top, we have total carbs, first column, and then the amount of fiber that is not available to our body. We cannot use it. And then simple sugars, and then complex sugars as starch, and then we have the net carb. What is net carb? Net carb is the net amount of carbohydrates that your body can use. So if you have 100 gram of carbohydrate in a food and 20 gram of that is fiber, is not available to your body, you have 80 grams of net carbs. Okay. So the top section of first 5 rows, top section of this table are fruits. And then we have starches like pasta, bread, and potato. And then we have two ultra processed food like Tim Tam and Nutella, and then we have some nuts at the bottom. Just let's look at those. So let's compare the values in apple, for example. Apple has 13 gram, 14 gram of carbohydrate, 2 grams of it is fiber, so it's around 11, 12 gram of net carbs available to your body when you eat apple. Okay, so 11 and these numbers are per 100 gram. So 11% of the apple that you're eating is sugar. Okay, so if you have like 300 gram of apple, you're eating 30 gram of sugar, and it's no different. So that sugar is no different for your body. Your body doesn't know what type of sugar you're eating. It's the same sugar. Okay, you're having some fiber as well, which is not that relevant. It's feeding your microbiome. That's okay. But they are saying that the second benefit of the fiber, they're saying that the fiber is slowing down the digestion and absorption of the uh, carbohydrate, which is not that accurate and not that beneficial, I should say. Because if fiber is slowing down the absorption of the nutrients from the food, it's not selective. It doesn't have intelligence to select between different type of nutrients and just go and block the absorption of the carbohydrates from the same food that you've just eaten. Okay, so that fiber is blocking every nutrient from getting passed through the walls of intestine of you and going to the bloodstream. So it's blocking everything. So all the other essential and required nutrients from the food are being blocked as well. So they're not being absorbed. And then you're not just blocking the nutrients from the same food, from that apple that you just ate. You're blocking every nutrient from the food that you have just eaten. So everything that is happening to be around that fiber is not being absorbed. So it's not that beneficial. It's not that obvious that it's 100% good net benefit to have that fiber. So have that in mind. But so far we have 11% of sugar with an apple. And these numbers are from one source, so all of them, but these are just an indication. Just think about them this way. Let's compare that with strawberries. So strawberries have 7-8% of carbs, 2% of fiber, so it's just 5 or 6% of sugar available. Much better comparing to an apple. Okay. And the amount of sugar and starch, if you look at all of these fruits, other than banana, the rest of them, it's all almost all simple sugars. Okay, so they're saying, first of all, strawberry is much better choice comparing to apple, banana, and other things, grape. Okay, just know that if you're going to choose between different fruits, the ones that have lower net carb are better for you. Okay, and then there is a very good uh, common sense, very popular thought that they say that banana uh, is not that high in sugar because of its starch content. Just look at that. So it has like 5 gram, 5% of starch, much higher comparing to the rest of fruits. But you know that starch gets converted to simple sugar in seconds. So that belief is not correct. That's a common mistake. Okay. Let's go to starchy foods like pasta, bread, and potato. Let's pick one of them. So they're saying that potato is very good because it's starch, it's a complex carb. You should replace your simple carbs like simple sugars and table sugar with potato. That's a good thing because table sugar is refined sugar. It's chemically produced, it's ultra processed, it is refined after all. And potato is not. In that sense, yes, it's a good thing. But it's not a good food because it has more starch. So look at the potato, it in the table, it has 16 gram, 15 gram of starch and less than 1 gram of sugar. So almost all of the sugar, all of the carbohydrate in this food is starch. But you know that it's just few seconds away from being simple sugar. So that's not a good reason to have potato. The number that you should look at is the net carb. How much carb you're getting from potato? 15% of net carb you're getting from potato. How much is different from an apple? It's worse. Okay, it has 4% more uh, carbohydrate, and it's still lower comparing to banana, the superfood that everyone says that you should have. Let's look at ultra processed foods, Tim Tam and Nutella. Let's look at Tim Tam first. It has 60 gram of net carb. Okay, 62 gram of carbs and 2 gram of fiber, which I don't know what's the source of that in the food. So because it's not a natural food, so I don't know what's the source of that fiber. But the result is 60 gram of net carb. So 60% of Tim Tam that you're eating is carbohydrate, and it's raising your blood sugar and it's injecting sugar into your bloodstream. Okay, so it's not a good food. And then Nutella is 51%. Okay, and then let's look at nuts, the superfood that everyone says you should have because they are nuts and they are superfoods and they're very healthy. So let's look at, for example, cashew. Cashew has 26 gram of net carbs, almost 27. And look at the uh, starch and sugar. So it has 23 gram of starch, 5 gram of simple sugar. And because of that, they're saying that cashew is very good because all of the sugar from it comes from starch. Again, same discussion. You know the answer to that. It's no different. Compare cashew, for example, to uh, macadamia nuts. It has only 5 gram of net carb. So 100 gram, if you eat 100 gram of that, only 5 gram is carbohydrate. And it has 8 grams of fiber in it. Okay, so it's much better choice for you if you want to have some nuts comparing to cashew. There are many, many more reasons to have or don't have nuts. And we're going to talk about those. But from a carbohydrate perspective, the, the topic of today, you can choose macadamia over cashew. Okay, so by looking at this table, I hope that you have this idea of what is net carb, how you can choose between different foods. And when you're looking at the packaging at the food label, that I hope that you have watched the previous video. If you haven't, please go ahead and watch that one. It tells you about how to read the food label. But when you're looking at the food label, you can just easily go and find what is the net carb and what you should look at. Okay, so total carbs, total carbohydrates from the food label minus fiber gives you the net carb. Don't worry about the rest of the things, starch and simple sugar and added sugar or the natural occurring sugar or those things, they don't matter. All of these things are treated the same in the body. Simple sugar, starch, and added sugar and natural sugar in the food, they are the same with a few seconds, back and forth in the body. They all be treated the same. Okay. Before going further, just one more rule. Just look at those two ultra processed foods. Look at the sugar content and net carbs. 60 gram, 60%, 51%. Compare them to the rest of the things. Even the worst one, like the worst one in this table is 26-gram cashews. That's half of Nutella. Okay. So don't go for ultra processed foods. Don't go for foods that have more than one ingredients in them in the packaging. Go for the natural foods. They're much, much better than ultra processed foods. Okay. Well, I hope that this was informative for you, and I hope that by now you have good understanding of what carbohydrates are, what are different types of them, how they get converted to other types in the body, how our body reacts to them, and what is the mechanism of the digestion, and what's the difference between blood sugar and the sugar that you eat in your meals, and how you can choose the best one, the best carbohydrates. And then, very importantly, you know that carbohydrates are not essential in your meals, but you can have them. Okay. I hope you liked the video. If you do, please leave me some comment, and uh, I hope that we focus on hope and our wellness.